I'd like to talk a little bit about budgets and reserves, especially in condo associations, but in some HOAs this applies as well. The law is very simple and very clear, and it's amazing how many people just really don't get it. The obligation of the board is to set aside reserves for repair and replacement of certain capital items. These include roofing, painting, and paving, if they're applicable, or anything that costs more than $10,000 to repair or replace. Now, here's the rub. The law specifically says that reserves, as promulgated, need to be funded at 100%. So let's just use one simple example, a roof. Let's say your roof is going to last 10 years and cost $100,000 to replace, and the useful life is 10 years. So you're into year one. Very simple. How do you calculate the reserves for that line item? You put away $10,000, because $10,000 in year one and then $10,000 in year two, setting aside inflation and interest, of course, but $10,000 should be the line item in that roof replacement part of the budget. And similarly, you have to do the same with the other items. Now, there can be as many reserve line items as needed in order to meet your community's requirements. But what's important to remember is that those reserves must be fully funded in the promulgated budget, unless the members vote to adopt less than full reserves or waive the reserves. Think of waiver as saying wave goodbye, because that gets into language on your ballots and your proxies if you're going to do that. But I've found, having been in this practice since 1982, that lots of boards are afraid, maybe that's not the proper word, but they don't disclose the full amount of the budgetary needs of the association for these major items into the budget. And it's important that members know on a longer term basis that there are major expenses that are going to come up. And as the old commercial used to say, I think it was Fram oil filters, you can pay me now or pay me later. Well, it's not the choice between an oil filter and a new motor. You're going to need a new motor, or roof in your case. The question is, are you going to pay for it over time, or are you going to pay it in the form of a special assessment? And that is really what this comes down to. So there's elements of law here, which is that the board must include these reserves and must keep them and fund them in full from day one, dollar one of your budget. The only way you can avoid collecting less than full reserves is by a membership vote that takes place before that budget goes into effect. And I have suggested to boards that they hire these independent companies, not necessarily contractors, but reserve estimators, and get a solid handle as part of your fiduciary duty. That's a $2 word, which means you're in a position of trust and confidence to your fellow owners. I think the only higher duty that a person has is as a trustee. So in your fiduciary capacity, you should find out how much it's going to take to fund these major capital items, to reserve for these items, and to let the members know what's coming down the road. If the members, in their infinite wisdom, want to vote to waive those reserves, well, the board can accommodate that, usually at the annual meeting. But there's a challenge. If you're on a calendar year and your budget starts January 1st and you don't waive reserves until March, the board is legally obligated to keep those reserves in full until they're waived. They can't be retroactively waived, and you can't play with the reserves as some boards did during the Great Recession by assigning the accounts receivable to the reserves. If you're only collecting 80% of the money that you're supposed to collect because 20% of the people aren't paying, then what you've got to do is take that money and then fund reserves at the same proportion of the budget that they take up otherwise. It's a violation of the law to do anything but fund them fully as adopted, whether it's full reserves, whether it's partial. If it's waived, okay, but make sure that the following year you take that into account when you're going to put the budget together. I can't tell you how many presidents I've had in my office who take the position, well, the roof's going to last for 10 years and I won't be around then. I'll probably be in a nursing home or voted out or whatever by then, and so we're just going to ignore it. We're going to not fund the reserves. And guess what? 10 years later, not only are they very healthy, they're still on the board, they're still president, which is the subject of another video, and now the time has come to pay the piper, and they have to levy that special assessment, or they're going to have to borrow money and then pay off the roof over time with borrowed money, and who knows what interest rates will be then. So what's the easy decision? Follow the law. Promulgate the reserves. Put the numbers on the board. Make it big. I grew up in Chicago. Wrigley Field is a great scoreboard and it's all manual. Put the numbers on the board and make them big. Make them proper. Let the members know. And if you want, at your annual meeting or at a special meeting, let the members vote to waive or reduce the reserves. But do your duty. Get those reserves down, get them out, have them sustainable, and move ahead, and don't get caught by surprise. It's really a pocketbook issue, whether you feel that the members or whether you personally want to keep your own money until it's time to spend the reserves, but it's a legal issue in telling the members what is going to have to be done. And that is the bottom line.